She came back from Vegas glowing like she'd lived another life. A bridesmaid's whisper confirmed why. But before that glow, before the whispers, before my world cracked wide open, there was nothing but excitement. The kind of anticipation that makes your chest tighten and your hands twitch restlessly, like you're counting down to Christmas morning. Only this wasn't Christmas. It was her Bachelorette weekend in Las Vegas. Veronica had been talking about it for months, ever since her maid of honor suggested the idea. I remember the way her eyes lit up at the word Vegas, like it wasn't just a city, but an entire universe she'd been waiting to step into. To her, it was sparkle, adventure, one last celebration before tying herself to me forever. To me, it was just a city, hot sidewalks and slot machines, nothing more. But the way she leaned across the kitchen counter that night, smiling as she told me about pool parties, fancy dinners, and shows, I couldn't help but get caught up in her enthusiasm. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months, and I genuinely believed we were a team. She wasn't just my fiancée, she was my best friend, my partner, the person who made even dull errands feel like adventures. So when she said, "Rachel and the girls want to take me to Vegas," I smiled and nodded like any man who trusted the woman he was about to marry. Her energy was contagious in those weeks leading up to the trip. She'd come home from work and dive into planning with her bridesmaids, rattling off details about flights, hotel reservations, and coordinated outfits. I'd sit on the couch, listening half distracted, sometimes chiming in with a joke, "Make sure you don't gamble away the honeymoon fund," or "Don't come back married to Elvis." She'd roll her eyes, throw a cushion at me, and then lean over to kiss my cheek. I thought we were solid. I thought the glow in her eyes was just excitement for the wedding, not something darker, not foreshadowing betrayal. The night before she left, we packed her suitcase together. She made little piles on the bed, sparkly dresses, heels she never wore at home, bikinis that looked more decorative than practical. She held one up and asked, "Too much?" I grinned, shaking my head. "It's Vegas. I think that's the uniform." She laughed and kissed me, and for a moment, nothing felt wrong. I wanted her to have fun. I wanted her to feel celebrated. I wanted her to come back with stories about fancy dinners and silly adventures, not the kind of stories that rip a man's stomach apart when he hears them secondhand. If I'd known then what was coming, I would have held her longer when I dropped her off at the airport. I would have memorized the way she smiled at me when she turned back before disappearing through security. I would have asked more questions, not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't trust the world she was stepping into. But I didn't know. I just stood there, waiting, believing we were about to start a forever that would be built on honesty and love. I didn't realize her forever would begin and end in the neon glow of Las Vegas. Before Veronica's flight, before her heels clicked down the jet bridge and out of my sight, she promised me everything would be fine. It wasn't just a casual "don't worry." It was layered, rehearsed almost, like she could sense my unease and wanted to patch it over before it even formed. She knew me too well. I'm not the jealous type, not by nature. I've always believed that trust is the bedrock of a relationship, and if you don't have that, you don't have anything. But still, Vegas has a reputation. Even she joked about it when she first brought up the trip. "What happens in Vegas?" she'd say with a sly grin. And every time, I'd laugh, pretending the phrase didn't scratch something deep in my chest. A week before she left, we sat on our couch going through the wedding checklist. I had my notepad, she had her wine glass. Between notes about the caterer and music playlists, I finally asked, "You're really not going to go too crazy out there, right?" She rolled her eyes, leaned over and kissed my shoulder. "Dave, I swear on this wedding, it's just girls' time. Rachel wants to gamble, Lacey wants to see a show, and I want to sit by the pool. That's it. No craziness. You've got nothing to worry about." I wanted to believe her, and at that moment, I did. The night before the trip, as she packed the last of her things, she gave me that same speech again, but softer, almost tender. She sat down beside me, resting her hand on my chest. "You know me," she said. "You know I'd never do anything to ruin us. We're a month away from our wedding. That's all I care about." Those words felt like cement at the time, solid, unshakable. I clung to them as we drove to the airport early the next morning. Even when I kissed her goodbye and she disappeared through security, I kept replaying it in my head like a mantra. She'd never ruin us. She said so herself. Looking back now, I realize promises can be the cruelest lies of all. Not because they're always intentional, but because they make you let your guard down completely. They make you believe you're safe when, in reality, the floor is about to give way. And when that floor collapsed for me, it wasn't just the betrayal that crushed me. It was the memory of her hand on my chest, her voice steady and reassuring, telling me I had nothing to fear. That memory became the sharpest blade of them all. While Veronica packed glitter dresses and heels for Vegas, my bachelor party looked nothing like that. Anthony, my best friend since high school, hosted it at his place. No neon lights, no strangers, no wild stories. Just a handful of close friends, a few pizzas, some cold beer, and a stack of old card games. If I'm being honest, it felt more like a Friday night hangout than a send-off into marriage. And that was fine by me. I've never been the type to crave the spotlight. I don't need loud music and strangers shouting over each other to feel alive. I'm the kind of guy who feels at home in a quiet backyard, sipping a drink with people I trust. That night was exactly that. We ordered too much food, argued about which movie to put on in the background, and eventually settled into telling old stories. The kind of stories that always come up when guys get together. Dumb things we did in high school, failed road trips, times we should have gotten in more trouble than we did. Anthony pulled out a cigar he'd been saving since his own wedding, and we passed it around like it was some sacred ritual. Someone asked if I was nervous about getting married, and I remember shaking my head. No, she's the right one. I just feel ready. And I meant it. I meant it with every fiber of my being. I thought about calling Veronica during the party, just to check in, but I didn't. I figured she was busy with her friends, living it up in Vegas. Besides, she had promised that everything would be fine. I told myself the best thing I could do was let her have her fun and show her I trusted her. The truth is, while my night ended with greasy paper plates and a couch full of half-asleep friends, I was proud of that. It was simple, but it was honest. No secrets, no regrets, no wild stories that needed to be covered up the next day. That night, as I drove home under quiet suburban streetlights, I actually felt grateful. Grateful for my friends, grateful for the calm, grateful for the fact that in a few weeks, I'd be standing in front of everyone I loved, watching Veronica walk toward me in her white dress. It never crossed my mind that at the very same time, she was already walking away from me. The first night she was gone, everything seemed normal. I texted her around midnight, "Hope you're having fun. Good night. Love you." She replied a few minutes later, "Love you too. Miss you already." Short, but sweet. I went to bed smiling, thinking about how soon we'd be husband and wife. But by the second day, something felt different. I'd send her messages in the morning, little things like, "How's Vegas?" or "Hope you're enjoying the pool," and hours would pass before I got a reply. When she did answer, it was clipped, bare bones. "Busy RN, all good, later." No emojis, no warmth. I told myself she was probably just caught up in the excitement. Loud music, flashing lights, friends dragging her from one place to the next. Vegas isn't exactly built for long phone conversations. But the shift gnawed at me. By the third night, her texts barely had punctuation. "Yeah, fun, tired, talk later." I tried calling once, around 11. The phone rang until it cut off. A few minutes later, a text came through. "Sorry, can't talk, loud here." That was it. I wanted to brush it off. I wanted to believe the woman who had sat on our couch just days earlier, promising me she'd never ruin us. But the tone in those messages didn't sound like her anymore. They sounded like someone trying to keep me at arm's length. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my phone heavy in my hand. I typed out messages and deleted them just as quickly. I didn't want to be that guy, the insecure fiancé blowing up his bride-to-be's phone. Still, the pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. Trust is supposed to be solid, but sometimes it erodes quietly, like a shoreline eaten away by waves. You don't notice it until one day you realize the land beneath your feet is disappearing. And that weekend in Vegas, every unanswered call, every clipped response felt like another wave pulling pieces of us away. By the fourth day, I stopped pretending everything felt normal. I'd call her in the afternoons, usually when I knew she'd be back at the hotel resting before another night out. Most of the time, my calls went unanswered. The few times she picked up, her voice sounded distracted, like I'd caught her in the middle of something. "Hey, babe," she'd say. But it wasn't the warm hey I was used to. It was quick, shallow, already halfway gone. "What are you up to?" I'd ask. "Oh, just out with the girls. About to head somewhere. Can I call you later?" Later rarely came. When she did call back, it was brief and full of static excuses. "Sorry, it's so loud here. Sorry, the girls dragged me out. Sorry, I passed out." Every sorry made me feel less like her fiancé and more like a stranger she was keeping on the edge of her life. I told myself not to read into it. I reminded myself that she had promised me, "You've got nothing to worry about." But even the way she said "love you" at the end of those short calls started to sound mechanical, like she was saying it out of habit instead of feeling. One night, I called around midnight. No answer. I called again an hour later, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Everything okay?" No reply. At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A single text. "Sorry, fell asleep early. Long day. Love you." I stared at the words until the screen went dark. She wasn't even trying to hide how rushed it sounded. That was the moment the unease shifted into something sharper. Doubt. The kind that sticks in your throat and makes it hard to breathe. I wanted to believe her, but every missed call, every vague excuse, every late-night text typed without effort was pulling at the threads of everything we'd built. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't the only one noticing. Someone else had been watching. Someone who would soon tell me the truth I never wanted to hear. It was late Sunday night when my phone finally buzzed, not with a message from Veronica, but one from Rachel, her maid of honor. At first, I thought maybe she was texting me about some last-minute wedding detail, but the tone of her words didn't match. "Dave, can you talk?" I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Bridesmaids don't usually text the groom in the middle of a Vegas weekend unless something's wrong. My first instinct was that Veronica had gotten sick, maybe too drunk, maybe in some kind of trouble. I dialed instantly. Rachel answered on the second ring, whispering like she was hiding in a bathroom stall. "Dave, something happened. I don't even know how to tell you this." My hand gripped the phone so hard it ached. "What do you mean? Is Veronica okay?" There was a pause on the other end, then a sigh. "She's not hurt. She's fine. But she's not being the person you think she is." The words clanged in my chest. My mind spun through scenarios, each one worse than the last. "Rachel, just say it." She lowered her voice even more. "I saw her. She hooked up with some guy here, at the club. It wasn't innocent, Dave. I watched her leave with him." Silence. The kind that burns in your ears. I couldn't speak at first. My brain rejected it like a bad signal. This was Rachel. Responsible, blunt, the kind of friend who never sugarcoated anything. If she was saying this, it wasn't gossip. It was fact. "Are you sure?" My voice cracked against my will. "I wish I wasn't, but yes, I'm sure. And I'm sorry you had to hear it from me, but you deserve to know before you marry her." I sat there, phone pressed against my ear, staring at the dark ceiling of my bedroom. Veronica had promised me. She had sworn on our wedding. And meanwhile, across the country, she was breaking every vow before we even had the chance to make them. When Rachel finally hung up, I stayed frozen for what felt like hours. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was heavy, slow, like it had sunk into the floor. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't paranoia. It was truth. After Rachel's call, sleep was impossible. I lay there in the dark, my phone on my chest, the ceiling fan spinning in slow, mocking circles above me. My mind kept replaying Veronica's promises, her hand on my chest, her voice steady, her words, "I'd never ruin us." But now I knew better. I didn't want to believe Rachel, but the details she gave me, the name of the club, the time it happened, even the color of Veronica's dress that night, were too sharp to ignore. Rachel wasn't guessing. She had seen it. Still, I needed more than words. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would keep Veronica from twisting this into a misunderstanding. The next morning, I checked Veronica's social media. She had posted a few photos with the girls, smiling at a restaurant, posing near a pool. But there was nothing from the night Rachel mentioned. No pictures of the club, no stories, no updates. Just a gap where the betrayal had happened. I called her that afternoon. No answer. I called again an hour later, straight to voicemail. Finally, late in the evening, she picked up. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice stretched thin, too cheerful. "Sorry I've been MIA. It's just been crazy here." "Crazy?" I asked, my voice low, steady. "Yeah, you know, non-stop, pool, dinners, clubs, barely had a second to breathe." She laughed, but it was forced, like she was trying to cover the cracks. I let the silence hang for a moment before I said, "Rachel called me." The air shifted instantly. Her laugh died mid-breath. "What do you mean?" "She told me what happened. At the club. That you left with someone." The line went dead quiet. For a few seconds, all I could hear was her breathing, shallow, uneven. Then she spoke, her voice defensive. "Dave, she's exaggerating. She had too much to drink. You can't listen to her." But she didn't deny it. Not once. That was all I needed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg for an explanation. I just said, "We'll talk when you're back." And then I hung up. The evidence was there, even if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. The shortened texts, the vague excuses, the missed calls. the silence when confronted, and Rachel's whispered truth. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't paranoia. It was betrayal, full and complete. When Veronica's plane landed, I was waiting. Not at the airport. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. But at home, her suitcase wheels scratched against the hardwood as she dragged it inside, her smile a little too wide, her skin glowing like she'd just come back from a week in paradise.
"Hey, fiancé,"
she said, leaning in to kiss me. I stepped back. Don't. The smile faltered, just slightly, but I caught it. She set the suitcase down, her hand frozen on the handle. Dave, what's going on? You tell me. Her eyes darted, calculating. If this is about Rachel, it is. My voice was calm, too calm, the kind that makes liars nervous. She told me everything. And then it began. The denial, the spinning, the desperate weaving of a story that even she didn't seem convinced by. She's lying, Dave. She was drunk. She's jealous of me. You know that. She's always been competitive, even in college. Veronica, I cut her off, my tone sharp. She didn't just tell me. She gave me details. The club, the time, what you were wearing. Her face drained. For the first time, I saw panic flicker across her expression. She sank onto the edge of the couch, her voice breaking now. It wasn't like that, I swear. Yes, I kissed someone, but it didn't mean anything. It was stupid, it was the alcohol, it wasn't what she's making it sound like. A kiss. That was her first retreat. The first step back from the edge of the cliff. You left with him, I said evenly. Tears welled in her eyes, sudden, convenient. I didn't sleep with him. I promise you, I didn't. Dave, please, you have to believe me. I love you. I want to marry you. Don't let one stupid mistake ruin everything. Her voice cracked in all the right places, but her eyes wouldn't hold mine. That told me everything I needed to know. Betrayal doesn't always come screaming. Sometimes it comes begging, with tears on its face and excuses in its mouth. But underneath, it's the same. A choice made, a line crossed, a promise shattered. And as I stood there, watching her crumble into rehearsed sobs, I realized something that made my stomach twist. She wasn't crying because she regretted what she'd done. She was crying because she'd been caught. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even pace. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching Veronica unravel on the couch. Her tears streaked her makeup, her voice cracked as she reached for me, but I didn't move. I had nothing left to give her. "Dave, please," she begged, her words tumbling over each other. "We've planned everything. The venue, the dress, the guests. We can get past this. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake. I don't even remember half of it." That line nearly made me laugh. She remembered enough to feel guilty. She remembered enough to lie. "I believed you," I said quietly. "Every promise you made. Every time you looked me in the eye and told me I was the only one. I was ready to stand up in front of everyone we know and vow my life to you. And this is what you do with it? A weekend in Vegas? And it all meant nothing?" She shook her head violently, mascara smearing. "It meant everything. You mean everything. Please don't do this. Don't throw us away." The words echoed back at me, bitter and hollow. Don't throw us away. As if she hadn't already tossed us into the gutter the second she left that club with another man. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "We're done, Veronica. The wedding's off." Her face twisted, her crying turning sharper, almost angry. "You're seriously going to give up on us? On everything we built? Over one mistake?" One mistake? My voice rose just slightly, the first crack in my calm. "That one mistake tells me exactly who you are, and I'm not marrying that." She lunged forward, clutching at my arm, but I stepped back. The distance between us felt permanent now. The silence stretched heavy in the room. Finally, I walked to the kitchen counter, where the stack of wedding contracts and RSVPs sat neatly clipped together. I slid them into a drawer, shut it firmly, and turned back to her. "You wanted a different life in Vegas?" I said, my voice flat. "Congratulations. You just got it." And with that, I left her sobbing on the couch while I stepped outside into the cold evening air. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something close to relief. Calling off a wedding isn't just breaking up with a person. It's detonating a bomb in the middle of two families, two friend groups, and months of expectations. News travels fast when a wedding is only weeks away. Within days, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Some calls came with shock, some with anger, and a few with quiet understanding. My parents backed me without hesitation. My mom's voice shook when I told her what happened, but it wasn't with doubt, it was rage. "She betrayed you, David. You did the right thing. We'll call the guests on our side. Don't you worry." My dad, quieter, simply said, "Better now than 20 years in." But not everyone saw it that way. Veronica's mother called me, her voice full of forced calm, asking if we could talk this through before making a rash decision. I could hear Veronica crying in the background. "She made a mistake," her mom pleaded. "All couples go through bumps. Don't throw away your future over something that doesn't have to define you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said, "She already defined it for me." And I hung up. Then there were the friends. Some texted me with sympathy. "Man, I can't believe she did that. You deserve better." Others, mostly her bridesmaids, sent long messages defending her, calling me cruel, claiming I should have given her another chance. One even wrote, "You're overreacting. A kiss in Vegas doesn't erase everything she feels for you." But none of them were marrying her. None of them were the ones who had to live every day knowing she'd broken her word before the vows were even spoken. Anthony, my best man, summed it up best when we sat on his porch a few nights later. He handed me a beer, leaned back in his chair, and said, "You just dodged a bullet, man. Trust me, better a canceled wedding than a miserable marriage." He was right. I could feel it in my bones. The hardest part wasn't the calls or the gossip. It was the quiet moments. The realization that the life I thought I was about to step into had vanished overnight. The apartment we'd planned to move into, the honeymoon tickets sitting in a drawer, the suit hanging ready in my closet, all of it had turned into relics of a future that no longer existed. But even in that loss, there was something steadying. Like standing in the wreckage of a storm and realizing you're still breathing. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step towards something better. After the calls slowed, after the messages stopped buzzing every hour, I found myself alone in the silence of my apartment. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I could actually breathe. Relief isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes like a whisper, slipping in quietly after the chaos burns out. That's what it felt like, a strange, calm emptiness where all the noise used to be. I expected to feel broken, bitter, angry beyond repair. But instead, what I felt most was clarity. I wasn't waking up every day second-guessing myself, waiting for the next excuse, or forcing myself to trust someone who had already proven unworthy of it. The weight was gone. There were still moments, of course. I'd see her toothbrush in the cup by the sink, or notice the dress she'd left hanging in the closet. I'd feel that sting in my chest, a reminder of what almost was. But even then, I knew the pain was temporary. What mattered most was that I hadn't tied myself to a life built on lies. I thought about what my dad had said, better now than 20 years in. He was right. Better to face betrayal before vows than after decades of them. Better to end it clean than to drag myself through years of doubt, resentment, and slow decay. At night, I'd sit on the balcony with a drink in my hand, listening to the hum of the city below. And in that stillness, I'd feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. The future I had pictured with Veronica was gone, but it was better than living in a future she had already poisoned. And the more I sat in that silence, the more I realized I wasn't mourning her as much as I was mourning the version of myself who had believed her promises. That man was gone. The man who remained was steadier, sharper, and maybe for the first time in years, free. If there's one thing I've taken from all of this, it's that your gut is rarely wrong. Looking back, the signs were there from the very beginning of that trip. The shorter texts, the missed calls, the vague excuses. The sudden shift in tone that made me feel like a stranger instead of a fiancé. I brushed it all off because I wanted to believe her promises more than I wanted to face the truth. That's the mistake most of us make. We think trusting someone means silencing that inner voice that whispers, something isn't right. But trust isn't blind. Trust has to be earned, and it has to be protected. The second you start making excuses for the person you love because the reality feels too painful, you're already lying to yourself. Veronica swore she would never ruin us. She said those words with a straight face, her hand on my chest, looking me dead in the eyes. And then she boarded a plane, went to Vegas, and proved that promises mean nothing without the actions to back them up. If you're reading this and you've ever felt that gnawing doubt in your relationship, don't ignore it. Don't bury it under excuses or let someone convince you you're paranoid. Pay attention to it. Ask the hard questions. Protect yourself before you give away your whole life to someone who doesn't deserve it. I'm not saying to live suspiciously. I'm saying to live honestly. And sometimes, honesty means admitting that the person you love might not love you the way you thought. Canceling the wedding wasn't easy. It was humiliating, painful, and messy. But it was also the best decision I've ever made. Because as hard as it was to walk away from Veronica, it would have been harder to wake up every day next to a wife I couldn't trust. So here's my advice. Never ignore your gut. Trust it the way you wanted to trust them. It won't betray you. And when you do finally find the right person, the one who doesn't make you question, who doesn't give you excuses, who doesn't make you feel small, you'll know. Because your gut won't be heavy with doubt. It'll be steady, quiet, calm. That's what I'm waiting for now. And I know when it comes, I won't mistake it for anything else.